Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome again to our weekly COVID-19 update, our Native Strong Town Hall with Dr. Lyle Ignace of the Gerald L. Ignace Indian Health Center. Thank you all for joining us. We got a hard stop today at 3:45, so we're just going to jump right in. If you have any questions, you're joining us via Zoom or Facebook, drop in a comment in the chat bubble via Zoom, or just to drop in a comment as you normally would on Facebook. With that, I think Mark may join us later, but if not, we'll move right along here. And thank you again, Dr. Ignace, for being with us today.
Thanks, Jeremiah. I know our day has been filled with all kinds of stuff, and I think what's important is I got some updated information I think is important that we can go through. So I'll get right into it. So myocarditis. We're hearing a lot about myocarditis right now. CDC is looking into it. And so it's important right now because what we're talking about are the vaccines, especially in our younger adults as well as our young teenagers, and what's the ramifications of that related to to people and getting the vaccine. So right now, myocarditis is predominantly being seen within 1 week after the second dose. Rarely does it even occur after the first dose. It's the second dose. And what is commonly viewed as a symptom is chest pain. So right now, CDC is looking at about 1,200 initial reports regarding this heart inflammation. And there appears to be an association with the mRNA vaccine, so that's Pfizer and Moderna, although they haven't been able to definitively link any cause and effect with the vaccine. So now, as I mentioned, young adults, late teens, early 20s seems to be the most predominant group of individuals, and this is usually after the second dose. Males more than females, and rarely is there any case of myocarditis in the older age groups. So you know, I'll go through what myocarditis here is in a second, but I wanted to give you kind of the upfront latest of information. So there's 267 cases of myocarditis reported after receiving one dose, but the predominance of cases, almost over 800 cases, are appearing after the second dose. So rarely on the first dose, predominantly after the second dose is given. So what is myocarditis? Myocarditis is the inflammation of the heart muscle, the myocardium. So I give a picture down below. On the left is what the normal kind of anatomy structure of the heart. On the right is the myocarditis, and the heart muscle becomes inflamed. So much like, let's say if you were to work out and lift weights, you haven't lifted weights for a long time, you go in and you start lifting a lot of weights and your muscles get sore. That's kind of the same concept. So there's swelling, inflammation in muscle groups, and in this case, inflammation or swelling in the myocardium or the heart muscle. So we know that viruses can be certainly a cause for myocarditis. That's where it's predominantly seen as a cause. So the signs and the symptoms of myocarditis can be pretty mild, and you may not even know you actually have it. But if you do, the predominant presentation for myocarditis is typically chest pain, and it's chest pain, mainly right in the center of your chest. People can have shortness of breath, either at rest or during very minimal physical activity. I mean, really marked shortness of breath without any real cause. I mean, you could be sitting there and feel you can feel like you can't get a very good breath, and you feel like you're not gasping, but you are just not comfortable, and the breathing becomes a little more labored. Fatigue, fluid retention, swelling in the legs, ankles, and feet. And if severe enough, if there is a lot of inflammation going on, rapid heart rates or atypical rhythms or arrhythmias can occur. So what would be a normal beat, 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 beat now becomes beat, 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 really fast, or beat, 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 irregular heartbeats. That would be certainly a good indication that something obviously is going on with the electrical impulses of the heart. Now, the other thing too that comes up as signs or symptoms is headache, body aches, joint pain, fever, sore throat, and even diarrhea. Now, if I ask you, what does that sound like? Well, that kind of sounds like COVID. I mean, we've been talking about, presenting symptoms and signs of COVID for over a year now, and much of these certainly sound like COVID, and it certainly could be COVID in and of itself, but looking at the association between symptoms and vaccines also puts another twist in this. So again, a lot of these signs and symptoms certainly can blend into each other. So getting a history on someone and their association to a vaccine is going to be really important in how the management of someone with myocarditis is. So, as I mentioned, CDC is well involved in this, and they reported out more recently that 323 confirmed reports, cases of myocarditis under the age of 30. Among those confirmed, 218 people have fully recovered. So that's a pretty good response. Almost 80% have fully recovered. 9 people were hospitalized, 2 were in ICU, and then there have also been, in concurrence of this, there have been 300 million doses of vaccine being administered nationwide. So if we look just at that alone, 300 million doses have been given out, and what we're talking about is 323 cases of myocarditis at the CDC. So that's, that is almost like 1 in a million, and that's really, really small, and pretty rare for this kind of incidence to occur. But we hear about it all the time in the news. I wanted to give you some background regarding this. So when you look at the occurrence of myocarditis, looking at both Moderna, the mRNA, Moderna, and Pfizer, there were 12.6 heart inflammation cases per 1 million. That's here in the United States. So again, that's just here in the United States. When we look at it worldwide, the case number is actually much lower. So the highest confirmed rate of myocarditis was about 20 cases per 1 million doses with Moderna, compared to 8 cases per million for Pfizer. Now let me put this in perspective a little bit, because I've talked to this a little bit before about whether or not the blood clotting disorders that occurred. So 1 in 500,000 chances, or 1 in 500,000 chances that you could be struck by lightning. Well, looking at this, 8 cases per million or 20 cases per million, that risk or that probability that this could happen is very rare. Even when people get struck by lightning, this is a rare event. So CDC is not pulling these vaccines, and rightly so. And they want to assure at least the public that the benefits of getting vaccinated outweigh the risk. So that's important to know. It is something that does occur, but the incidence of this occurrence is really, really, really low. So, but if this was to occur, at least you know what the signs and symptoms are of myocarditis, and at least that early sense of something's wrong would prompt someone should go and get evaluated and get treated. So the earlier someone gets treated, the quicker, and that's basically what happens is people typically recover within a day or two of presenting symptoms with treatment, and they usually go on to have very normal recovery and go about their normal business. So just to give an update, with the current variants, predominantly the Delta variant, and you see that here up on top, that B16172.2. Now, compared to what I had brought up last week was the first time Wisconsin reported numbers on this new variant, the Delta. There were 35 documented cases. So in the past week, there's only been one new case of the B161.7.2. Now, that's not very much. It's one case in 1 week. When we start looking at all the other cases that are occurring, we see that the predominant variant, at least here in Wisconsin, continues to be the B117 or the UK variant, otherwise known as Alpha. So one new case of the Delta, and but most of the new cases that do come up are of the B117 variant. So now, some interesting occurrences here in the United States. The number of cases are continuing to slide. They're sliding and sliding every day, and that was kind of the main point here I wanted to showcase. But something is changing in Israel and the UK. Now, they've been touted as being successful in their vaccine campaigns because they've had such a high rate of their population who have taken the vaccine. However, in the last week, at least in Israel, there have been spikes of new cases. 61 in a day, 89 in a day. Now, this is kind of new because what was occurring prior to this, 2 weeks prior to these two spikes, was that there were hardly any cases being documented or reported. Now, things have changed, and now we have 2 out of the 3 days have seen a spike in numbers. Now, the concerning part with that, as it is occurring in the United Kingdom, the UK, is now the UK is starting to see a surge, not just a spike, but a surge of new cases that are occurring in the population. Now, they have been very successful in vaccinating the population there, but now they are seeing kind of an uptick, a rise of new cases. Now, what is being reported is that it is primarily due to the Delta variant that's occurring in the unvaccinated population. So that is concerning, and seeing that we're having kind of a stagnant plateau of new vaccinations that are occurring here in the United States. And when we look at what's occurring here in Wisconsin, almost 50% of the state has been vaccinated now, 78,000 people 12 to 15 years of age. So, but we've been in 49% for a good week and a half now, and it's not really budging. It's just kind of slowly ticking up, but nothing. So the reason why I bring this up, why I bring up what's occurring in other parts of the country, is this same kind of phenomenon could occur here in Wisconsin, and predominantly in the unvaccinated population. So researchers are coming more and more out in articles and postings and talks is that the current vaccines that are in the United States, so that's Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, have shown to be quite effective, not quite as effective to the original virus, but they are effective in prevention and even have a pretty good track record in terms of prevention of severe disease or prevention of hospitalization. So what the general sense here is anyone who gets vaccinated has a pretty good rate of prevention, and it's the unvaccinated population that has to be concerned about any new rise or spike in new cases, and whether or not that's due to Delta or other variants, it's still very much in circulation right now. So here's kind of the profile of race and ethnicity here in the state of Wisconsin. What's in yellow, if we look at the bottom row, single dose, the number of new doses in the past week, what we're seeing is what's highlighted in yellow is a downward trend from the week prior. A green means an upward upward trend in terms of new cases for that population. So, we have this up and down that's been occurring for the last month and a half. And I think that's going to continue to be the case as we keep moving forward, as there may be an uptick of new vaccinations that occur that week, and then the next week it keeps going down. So we're in this kind of fluctuating state of low vaccination rates throughout the entire state. So, and this is really looking at where we are, who are people who are fully vaccinated, 45.5%. And that ever increase is just slow rise in overall rates by race and ethnicity. Other facts about what's going on here in the States. So 5.4 million doses have been given. If you look at that middle Excel file here, you see to the far right, June 23rd, 11,433 doses average on a daily basis. And just looking at where this is going, it's been a good 2.5 months now since April 14th, where we were at our peak. We have now been on a downward slide ever since. So the table at the bottom, the lower half here, is really looking, I was trying to show what the 12 to 15-year-old, that's the new eligible group for getting vaccinated. I wanted to show what their aggregation is, what their average number of doses that are being given out on a daily basis. So as you can see, that trend continues to go down, down, down. And to the right here, the overall 7-day average minus the 7-day average for 12 to 15 gives you what are just purely just adults, 16 and older, who have gotten the vaccine. And you can see that there too, the trend continues to go down and down. So both efforts to get adults as well as young teenagers, that continues to decrease in both categories. Looking at what's occurring in the United States as a whole, we see that the trend continues to decrease. And what's a little concerning about this is that on the far right side, you see the averaging, we're averaging 719,000 doses per day. And what's concerning about that is looking, when I showed this graph here, where that red line stops, looking forward. So this is kind of a 3 or 4 day delay. That red stop where the line stops, that's 3 or 4 days, a couple days ago. And so the new days that haven't been tabulated in the average is this. So as of 2 days ago, 517,000 new doses. So what was the average 4 or 5 days ago, and with the anticipated new doses that are occurring now, you can see where that trend is going to continue to slide and slide and slide. So I've shown this. I've talked about this extensively about what that herd immunity, that critical threshold point is, and if 70%, that's generally been considered the point at which we would need to either have people who've been infected by that amount, or the population that need to be vaccinated. And that threshold of 70% is about 228 million people here in the United States. So that's based on about 330 million people who reside here in the United States. Now, there's been lots of talk about July 4th, we're going to hit 70%, either single dose. So I'm just going to go through this a little bit, because based on those earlier projections and what the current administration has come out basically conceding that they were not going to get to that mark of 70%, let me go through what this means. So there's 2 points here. One is that I would advocate that when we talk about herd immunity, that critical threshold, we need to take the total population collectively together as a whole, rather than segment population. We're talking about the entire population. So for the total population, for a single dose by July 4th, what I'm kind of projecting where we are now and what I suspect where we will be on July 4th, it looks like about 54.8, 54.5, that's the range where single dose numbers will probably land on July 4th. Now, if 70% is that mark, there's a shortfall, the shortfall being the gap between reaching 70% where we are now. That looks like about 48 million people, 48 million people short of reaching that mark. Now, if we're going by just adults 18 and older single dose by July 4th, the current trajectory or projection is that we'll get between 66 and 67% of that. That's a shortfall of about 8 million people. When you're saying, well, 8 million people, that's not, that's better than 48 million. Now, the concerning part with that is if you look at taking into consideration the trajectory where we're going in terms of new vaccines per day and the shortfall of us needing to get to 70%, how long would it take us to get to that 70% or make up that 8 million people? We're looking at close to 30 or 40 days to get to that, to make up that shortfall. And we're looking at mid-August is what we're really looking at. So July 4th, we're not going to make. In fact, it may take us 30 days, 40 days to get us into that range of 70% based on the current rate of new doses of where we are now. Now, I did mention total population single dose. If we're looking at total population, shortfall of 48 million, how long would it take us to get to 70% when we're looking at the total population? Well, based on current rates of how we're doing right now. So to make up 48 million, it would take about 160 days. 160 days. So we're looking well into to winter. We're looking at through the holidays and looking at January 1, Happy New Year, is when we'd get to that total population of single dose 70%. That's where we're at. Now, unless something remarkable happens between now and July 4th, or something that would convince more people to get vaccinated, that is the current trajectory that at least I see us, the United States, is currently on. So as of right now, for just looking at adults 18 and older, 30 to 40 days, mid-August. That's what my calculator certainly suggests where we're heading. So this, I just wanted to show what was last week compared to what's occurring this week. I know people are looking at summer traveling and summer, visiting and going around to their more common destinations that they want to go visit. I put a few marks here just to kind of list where states are, where individuals more likely want to visit. But looking at the lower half of this, looking at Michigan, Minnesota, New Mexico, Wisconsin, we're doing better. The Midwest is doing better. The number of cases on the average per day are going, the number of cases in the past 7 days are going down. We see that Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin are all sliding down in terms of cases in state, which is good. This is what we want to see, and so that's giving you a general sense as to what is occurring. So looking back now here in Milwaukee County, where are we now? We're looking at vaccine percentages by race and ethnicity, and what's the impact been in the last week? Well, obviously there's some good signs here. What we're seeing is a flattening of fully vaccinated individuals in the Asian population. We're seeing a 9% increase in the non-Hispanic white population, a 3% increase in the Native, 4% increase in Hispanic, and a 3% increase in the African American community. So, overall, the numbers are continuing to go up. And that's looking at the kind of the purple graph. When you look at the greener graph, we see that focusing a little bit more on the Native population, we see that half of the Native population in Milwaukee County has now received at least one dose. So, this is a continual process, and it is continuing to increase steadily. And this is good news. This is what we want to see, because we want to diminish the number of new cases as much as possible. Looking at what's going on throughout our region. So Michigan, Minnesota, Wisconsin, in that middle table here, we see that on the left-hand side, the number of cases, aggregated cases to date, the number of new cases in the past week. So Michigan has had 14 new cases. Minnesota has had 7. Here in Wisconsin, and certainly kind of a big bounce from what was the week before of only 1. Now Wisconsin has seen 16. So it's just a quick reminder that this pandemic is still ongoing, still quite present, and people should not necessarily let their guard down, and ever more reason that individuals should really reconsider in getting the vaccine. In terms of what's going on here in the state, the 7-day average is now 77. Again, we haven't seen these kind of low numbers since March 25th of last year, 2020, which at that time was 80. So we're getting closer and closer to that mark, but obviously, like I mentioned, here in Wisconsin, 16 new cases in the past week is a stark reminder that this is nowhere over. Now, I wanted to bring this slide up because I think it's important, because in the very beginning, we've been pushing kind of this strategic effort to vaccinate the most vulnerable. And we know that's by chronic conditions, we know that's by age. And you can see that here in Milwaukee County, you can see that trend where there's a very good success of vaccinating 65 and older. Then we started looking at the younger populations, and each age group, as you go by, you see that there's, a very high, number of vaccinated people until you get to about 25 years of age, and then it just drops. And this is the concerning, and this kind of ties into what I'll be talking about here in a few minutes, but this ties into this notion that the new cases that are coming up are not occurring in the older population. They are occurring in the younger population. And this is just one of those examples as to why that would be. I had mentioned that people that are vaccinated have shown to be quite effective in reducing transmission and even severe disease, even against the Delta variant. So coming to this, when we start looking at, well, where are the new infections coming from? Well, it's coming from the population that is unvaccinated. And when we look a little closer why that would be, we can see why that is. And so, as I mentioned, all the age groups, older age groups are doing fairly well. And then we have an immediate drop off right in the middle in the age group of 20 and younger. So this is the most vulnerable population that are going to be at risk of as the unvaccinated population moves forward. This is the new focus group that needs to be more vigilant and certainly more careful, and really look at getting vaccinated as soon as they possibly can. Now, I wanted to bring this up because, and I'll go through this fairly quick, but the number of cases, before natives were the number third group in the state in terms of case rate. Now that case rate is number two. Looking at hospitalizations, natives are second in hospitalization compared to other ethnic and racial groups. In terms of fatalities, when we look at all ages, native population has the highest fatality rate. So as I look a little more closely, how does this translate to the native population? So I had mentioned that people who get vaccinated, their transmission of infection are really low. Even severe disease of COVID is low. It's the unvaccinated people that I'm more concerned about, because unvaccinated people risk of transmission very high, and the risk of getting sick severe enough to be hospitalized is a real thing. So looking specifically at the age group of 35 to 45 here in the state of Wisconsin, native population is the highest. 35 to 45 is the highest in the state of Wisconsin. Now, the only caveat here is that difference between first and second rates of hospitalization is starting to decrease. So I don't know if this is an ongoing, this will be a trend where the native population may decrease. Time will tell, as we go forward. And it's possible that the native population may drop down to the number two spot. That difference between natives and African Americans is starting to shrink and shrink and shrink. So, but nonetheless, that is a very high case rate, hospitalization rate compared to other groups. Now, looking at things a little more closely. So in order to prevent hospitalizations, we actually need to get people vaccinated. And so when we look at knowing what occurs in Milwaukee County, that drop-off rate to 25 and younger, looking at the whole state as a whole, we see that in terms of 18 to 24, those vaccination rates are the second worst in the state. The second worst case of incidence of vaccination is second worst. And so there are reasons to be concerned about this population. Well, what about 25 to 34? Same thing. We're seeing that the native population has the second worst vaccine rate in the state of Wisconsin. What about 35 to 44? Same thing. Now, the only thing that may be a little more encouraging is as this older when we're looking at population segments here, I put here on the far right, what is the plus changes in the rate of vaccination. So by each ethnic and racial groups here, we see that African Americans have increased their vaccination, fully vaccination rate by 11, Natives by 16, Hispanics by 17, non-Hispanic whites 8, Asians 15. So every group is going is increasing their rate, but at the same time, not all simultaneously. So what about vaccination rates by all ages? So here, and this kind of coincides with what was presented in the Milwaukee County area, where the Native population was smack dab in the middle. Here, throughout the entire state, we see that the Native population smack dab in the middle. This would mean that the older age groups have a higher vaccination rate, that kind of that counters the low rate in the younger population to what we currently have as being right in the middle in the state. So now, one last thing I wanted to bring up, because this kind of all ties in as to that vaccination rate in the lower population, their risk of transmission, their risk of hospitalization. So what I did here on the lower half, it was really kind of red dotted age groups and the number of cases and their hospitalization. So what we're seeing at the very, very bottom, the color-coded lines, we see that the number of cases, the case rate is highest amongst 20 to 29 at 19%, 30 to 39, 13%, 40 to 49, 13%, 50-year-olds, 14%. That's in terms of the number of cases, overall cases, the percentage of new cases in the past week. Then we look at hospitalization. And this is where I'm concerned, because the trend is looking like the number of hospitalizations are starting to swing away from that older age group into this younger age group. And that's what I'm starting to see. And unfortunately, there have been 2 new fatalities, which is kind of remarkable because we normally don't see fatalities in such young age. Is there's been 2 new fatalities in the 20-year-olds. So is this a new trend? I don't know, but it's certainly a good reminder and an indicator that moving forward, the groups of individuals that are going to be highest at risk of transmission are going to be the unvaccinated, which tends to be right now the age group of 30 and younger. Jeremiah, I'm going to turn this over to you. I know there's kind of quick lightning rounds here, but I think it's important to highlight all of what I'm seeing right now.
Sure, thanks. Actually, Mark was able to join us, so I'm just going to pass it right over to Mark quick.
Bonjour, Dr. Ignace.
Hello, brother.
Yeah, I understand there's some excitement going on over at the center.
Yeah.
And what I'm wearing today for you and everybody that's watching is this young man here. His name is Red Bear, and unfortunately, childhood cancer is in his life. He just had his leg amputated, and it is a reminder, I think. And my sole question for you today is, a lot of people have put off their checkups, have kind of got along with things that are affecting them because there's so much attention, and rightfully so, on COVID-19, but they have foregone coming into the center for well checks, checkups, issues in our children that, you just say, hey, we'll later, that kind of thing. So here's my question is, if you could just give us let us know if the center is open for those people that want to get those well checks, those health checks. We know that COVID-19 is happening. That's what this program is about. But this is my encouragement, and hopefully you can tell us and also recommend a bit for each of our age groups when they should be coming in for those health checks, and perhaps getting that vaccination at that invulnerable age that so many young people are at. That is my last question, and it's good to be back here. Take care, everyone. And Dr. Ignace, that's my question.
Yeah, so we're definitely open, and I'm sorry to hear about this young person, because it's always tough, not only to see young people fall ill, but to have cancer and what he has to endure moving forward. I hope all the best for him. But you know, as Mark was discussing, I can't stress enough how important it is for yearly screenings or just annual visits to your doctor. Now, I will say that our health center is entirely open. We're fully operational, 40 hours a week, and almost to the point of where we were prior to when COVID started. Now, I will say that right now, about 75% of our encounters are now face-to-face, and 25% are by, telehealth. That was not the case a year ago. It was completely flipped, but now we are moving and transitioning back to more of that face-to-face encounter. How we all know our medical visits are normally conducted. We ask people to wear a mask when they come in. I wear a mask when I still keep seeing people face-to-face. And so I think it is important, not just for our younger generation, but I think when we're talking about just general health checkups, it's important. And I think they should start as early as they possibly can and look at annual visits, and just the assurance that there is healthy visits, and that may come with blood work, but it's important to know what there may be at risk for. Whether there's something physical that's being found or something by blood work, at least you have that opportunity to get that early detection and even look at prevention, not just tomorrow or next week, but looking at prevention 5-10 years from now. So we are open. We are taking clients all the time. I see new clients all the time, every day. And so it's important, as Mark alluded to, is getting that annual checkup. Not just the dentist, but we're also talking about medical, and so that's important. So thank you for bringing that forward, Mark.
Dr. Nash, yeah, it looks like we're right about your kind of shutoff time. So if you just want to leave us with your final words here, and we'll let you get out of here.
Sure, I appreciate it. And I know I plowed through a lot of information, but really the highlight is really looking at assuring that people do get vaccinated. And it really is my focus now, is assuring that the younger population, the 30 and younger individuals, do get vaccinated, because moving forward, this is where the predominance of cases are going to be. And my concern with the Delta variant around, and all the other variants, that the risk of transmission is going to continually be up, and for every infection there's always a risk for severe disease and hospitalization, which we don't want to see. So as the summer goes on, looking at even the immediate future as well as to the next school year, I think it's going to be important that people start getting vaccinated, start contacting your clinics, wherever that may be, wherever you get your health care, and find out how do you get on the list to get vaccinated, because this virus continues to stick around, and the risk of this sticking around means another possible variant change, and we could get into a different cycle here. So if there's an opportunity for parents and looking at their teenage kids and looking at the possibility of really reducing the risk, this would be the opportunity to do that now. And we take calls for people to get vaccinated all the time. So just important points that I wanted to get across. And so I apologize for having to leave a little sooner than usual, but please submit any questions to Jeremiah. We'll always look at responding to them. So get vaccinated, and until next time, everyone stay strong. Thanks.